Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Parshat Bereshit is the beginning of our Torah. And I want to begin with what should be a simple question. Do our words mean what we think they mean? Now, the obvious answer should be, well, of course they do. At the same time, we have all of these wonderful idioms about how our words can be twisted, how we can take our words can be taken out of context, how we can turn words on their head. And then sometimes we'll correct ourselves. Oh, well, I know that I said that, but I didn't mean it. My problems with words and meaning have been happening since the beginning. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. This is how our Torah begins, Genesis 1:1. It's often translated, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But Rashi points out that according to the rules of Hebrew grammar, it is more accurately translated when God began to create the heavens and the earth. When God began to create implies that something existed before, and then God decided to start creating. Rashi teaches that if the writer of this part of Torah had intended to say, in the beginning, different phrasing in Hebrew would have been used. Genesis continues by describing the creation of the world in 7 days. Many people take that to mean that God created the world in 7 days and that the earth is less than 6,000 years old. Others postulate that the word yom, day, doesn't actually mean day, where each day, quote unquote, could be 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000 years. Rashi again comes in. Now he's living back in the 11th century, so it's not like he had a lot of science backing him up. But just based on the text, he explains that if you read really, really closely, you realize that before God started creating light or anything else, water already existed. He concludes that the Torah wasn't trying to give a modern, detailed historical sequence of creation. Instead, Rashi leaves us with the impression that the stories of creation in the Torah were supposed to teach us about Jewish values, that the earth belongs to God and not us, that all of humanity is created in God's image, that each of us have the capacity for good and evil. Our Torah, therefore, does not always mean exactly what it says. That's why we rely on the diversity of rabbinic interpretation to understand how to apply Jewish teachings. As Reformed Jews, we readily acknowledge that some parts of the Torah or Jewish tradition don't work well in the 21st century. So what does the Torah mean? Well, answering that question involves lifelong engagement and study. And that's worked for us as a people for millennia. And for the most part, it still works for us today. What's incredible is that connecting to our sacred texts has been made even easier by websites like Sefaria.org, www.sefaria, S-E-F-A-R-I-A, I'll put it in the chat, .org. It is a comprehensive Jewish library that is all available through the internet, and it's something that everyone should check out. While ongoing study works for Jewish texts, where multiple interpretations works for Jewish teachings, if we're just looking for the news of the day, many of us don't want to have to sift through interpretation. We just want the facts. We just want to know what's going on in the world. And it seems like that has gotten a lot harder. It becomes more difficult to tell the difference between a news reporter and a news commentator. There's been too many times when, in a rush to break the news, the accuracy of the report broke down. It's a frustrating situation to not know what to trust. And in the midst of all of this difficulty, just this past week, Facebook and Twitter have proclaimed that they will stop allowing Holocaust denial on their platforms. While it is controversial, I applaud that effort. Now, I don't know how it will be enforced, but I think it's something that is to be recognized and appreciated. Holocaust denial intentionally puts forth disinformation without regard for documented evidence. Now, I understand the idea of free speech, but there's a difference between the marketplace of ideas and intentionally misleading and misinforming the public to muddy the waters and create doubt. In a recent survey, 63% of US millennials and Gen Z do not know that 6 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust. 63%. It seems overdue that Holocaust denial would be banned from social media platforms. I recognize that this is a slippery slope and one that should be approached cautiously on every level. But when it comes down to it, when it comes to Jewish texts, I want to explore the words and all of the diversity of meaning that comes with it. When it comes to the Holocaust, when it comes to current events, I want clear, accurate information without the need of fact checkers, without so much interpretation, where the words can be understood by the general public. Even if that means we have to curtail free speech to reduce the impact of Holocaust denial or other forms of disinformation. We need to know what's going on. We need to understand our history without intentionally having people trying to get in the way. It would all give us a great peace of mind. Shabbat Shalom.